چرا دولت‌های مختلف بیشتر و بیشتر دارن برای برنامه‌های فضاییشون هزینه می‌کنن؟ تجربه بهبود بعد از بازگشت از فضا چطوره؟ چرا آمریکا می‌خواد اولین فضانورد زن و غیر سفیدپوست رو به ماه بفرسته؟ سلام، من هادی نیلی هستم، مجری برنامه کلیک درباره فناوری. این گفتگوی ویژه من با یاسمین مغبلی، اولین فضانورد با تبار ایرانی که حدود 200 روز فرمانده ایستگاه فضایی بین‌المللی بوده. یاسمین مغبلی، خیلی ممنون که اومدیم به این گفتگو.
خیلی ممنون هستم، مرسی که اومدین تو هیوستون برای اولین برف انقدر بزرگ. اولین دفعه
ساعت 7 صبح بیدارتون کردم آوردیمتون اینجا.
چندی ماه طول کشید تا بعد برگشتنت از فضا ملاقاتت کنیم. این بهبود بعد از بازگشت از فضا چیه؟ چه روندی رو طی می‌کنی؟
Yes, so when we first get back, after I spent half a year in this environment, but weightless, and so your neurovestibular system is off. We work out every day up there, so our strong muscle groups are very strong, but it's all the little muscles you don't realize you use on a daily basis down here. So when you first get back, you can barely stand straight. If you get off at all, your center of gravity, you feel like you're just going to fall over. You're very unstable and wobbly, but we work with trainers 45 days for 2 hours every single day when we get back to get physically back in shape. And then of course we're also focused on debriefing the mission and collecting science on our bodies because we're part of the experiment as human research, and then debriefing our missions and all that sort of thing. So it's very busy when we first get back.
پس میشه گفت الان جاذبه بهت ساخته. سخت دوباره بهش عادت کردن؟
Yes, it takes a little while, but the recovery is quick at first, and then you think you're at 100%, and slowly you realize, oh, I wasn't yet. But after a couple months, I was almost fully back to normal physically.
الان راه رفتن روی زمین همونقدر عجیب هست که معلق بودن توی فضا عجیب بود؟
Oh, floating never got old. I dreamed a lot about flying and floating as a kid, and so I got to live that for 6 months, and like I said, it never got old. I loved it every single day.
میشه گفت مثل یه رویای طولانی بود برات.
Yes, since I was a very little kid.
But you didn't give up.
I didn't give up, and I think I had people in my life who always made me believe I could do this, so I think that was helpful.
You could be the same to some people.
ظاهراً که خودت هم برای بعضیا همچین آدمی هستی. نقاشی‌های بچه‌های ایرانی رو منتشر کردی که وقتی اون بالا توی فضا بودی برات فرستاده بودن. اون نقاشی‌ها چه حسی بهت داد؟
How did you feel?
Yes, I remember receiving those, and there were so many of them. I remember my biggest problem was there are so many that this video is going to be very long because I, displayed them in the cupola with the earth as the background. But I remember receiving those and thinking, I know as a kid for me it was important to see people who in any way I could connect to, whether they were from the local area or they in some way looked like me or I in some way related to them. I just know how important that is.
Was there anything specific when you
هیچ چیز به خصوصی درباره این نقاشی‌ها یادته؟ اینکه چه جوری دیده بودنت؟
Yeah, I think that the interesting thing was they were all so different. I mean, there were so many of them, and you could tell they were also from different ages based on how the drawings were, and some focused on just me and like my figure as an astronaut, but some were more focused on like drawing the background and the planets and the earth and things like that. So you could just tell the diversity of how the different kids think about things.
Almost 200 days in space. You said
تقریباً 200 روز در فضا بودی. گفتی نصف سال، ولی بیشتر از نصف سال بود. برای چیه روی زمین بودن دلت تنگ نشد؟
What did I not miss?
Yeah.
I did, well, I would say I didn't miss gravity, but I did sometimes because when I was floating it was fun, but when other things float it is not as fun because you quickly lose them and things become difficult. I think I didn't miss the daily, sometimes down here daily you can get focused on the differences and the arguments and things like that between people, and I didn't miss being away from that.
دلت براش تنگ نشد، ولی همچنان خبرها رو دنبال می‌کردی؟
of the news.
It's almost impossible, I think, not to follow the news, just because we have good communication from the space station back to Earth, and so you just inevitably hear things as you go along, and a lot of things happened while I was up there.
So many adults.
خیلی از ما آدم بزرگا اینجا روی زمین توی تنظیم میزان دنبال کردن اخبار و چرخ زدن توی شبکه‌های اجتماعی مشکل داریم. دوره قرنطینه قبل اعزام به فضا و بعدشون مدت که فضا بودی، ایده‌ای بهت داد که چطور میشه مدیریتش کرد؟
It's definitely something that I think each individual astronaut has to decide how they want to handle that. For me, when I was up there, I tried to be present in the moment because I was up there working with astronauts. I think in my time up there, as you said, almost 200 days, I crossed paths with astronaut in space from like 10 different nationalities, which is pretty cool to think about. And I tried to just focus on what I was doing in the present, and also I always try to keep in mind, whether I was in space or on Earth, what impact can I actually have, and not focus on things that would just, you know, bring my mood down for no reason, unless I was going to be able to in some way impact them.
What blew
اون
you
بالا
away?
اولین چیزی که باعث شد دهنت وا بمونه چی بود؟
I'd say there were three things. When launch, you take off, and it was very smooth, smoother than I expected on the first stage. Then the second stage is like rumbly and a very slow build to use. But then when that comes out, the second stage cuts out, that's when you're just weightless and floating. And at first we're strapped in. But when I first got the chance to unstrap and look out the window back at Earth, I'm sure most astronauts say this, but it is just such a unique way to see our planet. And then the other thing was when I first got to space station and we docked back there on the top of the space station, the zenith side. So I came in upside down and I was so confused and disoriented. I remember thinking like, I've trained so many hundreds of hours right here at Johnson Space Center in these mock-ups. But when you see something from a different angle, it looks totally different.
لابد آدم موشن سیکنسی هم نیستی که توی تکون حالت بد بشه.
You're right.
You know, it's funny. I didn't get really sick on the way up or the way down. Some people get sick one way, not the other. I was lucky I didn't get sick either way. I do actually get sick on Earth, motion sick on Earth sometimes, but I did not at all.
So even
پس یعنی اگه کسی هم توی حرکت حالش بد بشه، مانع این نیست که فضانورد بشه؟
Not necessarily, and it's really dependent. And it's hard to predict also who will get motion sick and who won't until you fly in space and just see.
دیگه الان میدونی حالت بد نمیشه. برامون بگو یه روز عادی توی فضا چطوریه؟ از اولش که پا میشی، اگه بشه گفت پا شدن.
say getting up in the space.
Yeah, sure. So I'd say the thing that is consistent is generally we start our workday at about 7:30 in the morning, depending on comm coverage. We have a morning planning conference, and we end the day around 7:30 in the evening with an evening planning conference. Between those 12 hours, you're working, but the work you're doing changes every day because, you know, our main mission up there is science, and we're sitting right now in the mock-up of the laboratory of Space Station, and that's our main mission. But by virtue of living and working in space, we need to do maintenance. We need to take care of stowage and cargo ops and resupplying things. And so there are a lot of other things that we're doing on a daily basis. So from hour to hour or minute, day to day, you're doing wildly different things.
فرمانده ایستگاه فضایی بودی. کدومش سخت‌تره؟ فضانوردهای دیگر رو توی خط نگه داشتن یا قهوه رو توی فنجون نگه داشتن؟
That might be dependent on the crew. I was very lucky. My crew and I got along extremely well, and I've always said in everything I've done in life, I've done some of the worst things with the best people, and it's been amazing. And I've done some things you would have thought were really cool with the wrong people, and it wasn't. And so that really made the mission. But honestly, for me, one of the hardest things was that other things floating. You lose focus for 5 seconds in space and something floats off and you could cost yourself an hour or two trying to spend finding it, and we're scheduled to 5-minute increments up there, so we have a very tight timeline to meet.
And you lost it.
یه جعبه ابزار اون بالا گم کردی.
Yes, during our spacewalk, and you know, a spacewalk for an astronaut, that's like the epitome of being an astronaut, something you train for so long, and we got out there, and it was both of our first spacewalks, and it was I had the tool bag, and went and tethered it to a handrail to go to work on a camera unit, and spent maybe 30-45 minutes on that task, and when I turned around, it was no longer there. So you know, unclear what happened if the tether wasn't fully on or what, but I remember pushing it away and it kept bouncing back. So it very much seemed tethered on, and unfortunately it wasn't there when I turned around.
کار آدم فضایی نبود؟
Well, I hope not. I don't think so.
توی این سالایی که کارت شده فضانوردی، وزن نمایندگی کردن هویت ایرانی آمریکایی رو حس نکردی؟
Yeah, I think that's something when I first got selected, I was maybe a bit naive to how important this would be for other people to see, and especially the next generation, and how big of a deal it is for some of them. And as I've come to realize that and know that more, it does weigh on me in the sense of, you know, I know all my flaws, and every time I mess up, and you talked about the spacewalk earlier, to me, that was part of it. It's like, did I in some way not represent us well? It's definitely something that I think about, but try not to focus on too much on a daily basis, I think.
چون خیلی ایرانی آمریکایی‌ها، ایرانیای اطراف دنیا، ایرانیای داخل ایران ممکنه براشون سوال بشه ایرانیای مطرح آمریکا مثل تو چطور برای این بخش از هویتشون وقت میذارن.
Yeah, I think for me, you know, I grew up speaking Farsi in the household, but I never learned to read and write it. So that was something that now, since I've been selected, I've been working on trying to learn reading and writing. And you know, I'm still very slow at it, almost like a 5-year-old. But learning that aspect and trying to be better. You know, when I was younger, I knew how to speak Farsi, but sometimes I could hear my own accent, so I didn't want to. So trying to practice that more and be proud of speaking it by being embarrassed to speak it. And in terms of music, like, you know, when برای came out, I listened to that a lot when I was on space station.
برای ترسیدن به وقت بوسیدن برای خواهرم خواهرت خواهرامون برای تغییر مغزها که پوسیدن برای
You know, in some ways just trying to feel connected, and every time we passed over Tehran, I would try to take a look, and a lot of times it was covered in a bit of a haze, but I remember there was one day where I was like, oh, I can see it so clearly, and that's where my parents grew up.
Were there any other
جای دیگه ای از ایران هم بود که مورد علاقت باشه وقتی از فضا از بالاش رد می‌شدی؟
Yeah, well, there's of course that beautiful view as you come over the Gulf of the mountain range, and it's, you know, that it's one of the most like recognizable things as you come over. That was one of my favorite passes, and you can pick it out right away.
پروژه آرتمیس 3 میخواد اولین فضانورد زن و اولین فضانورد غیر سفید پوست رو به ماه برسونه.
You could be one of them.
خودت هم میتونی یکیشون باشی. این چه تأثیری روی آیندمون در فضا داره؟
To me, I just think a couple things. Like, there's the actual fact of just, like we talked about earlier, when people, and especially I think about the younger generation, like see someone they can connect to, it makes them think they can do it too, and make them believe they can do it too. And I very much believe in the power of mind. But also, I genuinely believe diversity makes us stronger, because I don't experience the world in the same way as a man would. A man doesn't experience the world in the same way I would. And same thing for different ethnicities. Just by virtue of who we are and how we grew up, we think differently because we're shaped by our experiences, and we can look at a problem differently because of that. And so, you know, when you have 100 people in a room, if they all think exactly alike, it's not of any increased value. But if you have 100 people who can look at something differently, that's so much more powerful, I think.
So it's not a matter of being qualified.
پس قضیه این نیست که کی صلاحیت داره. چون هر کی به این مرحله رسیده دیگه صلاحیت رو داره.
Qualified.
Yes, I think we do try to look at like what specifically does this mission need, and some people, you know, we all come from different backgrounds. We've got people in the office like myself who are military aviators, we have doctors, we have engineers, we have all sorts of different backgrounds. So there might be pieces where you're going, okay, this person's strengths really add and combined with this other person. So it's really, I'd say, putting the team together versus necessarily just the individuals. As individuals, we're all qualified.
فقط یه لحظه پیش ما تصور کن تو توی اون چکمه هایی باشی که پا روی ماه میذاره. معلومه احساساتی شدی.
Absolutely.
اون لحظه برای تو چه معنی داره و برای بشریت؟
You know, something when I was up here on the space stations, something I realized on a daily basis, I was filled with so much hope for what, because I was up there, like I said, with people who I never would have met before, people from countries we aren't working with in any other aspect. And I remember thinking, like, we built this incredible thing in space, this orbiting laboratory, and every day that filled me with so much hope for what we can do when we work together. And I think, like, going on like the Artemis missions, not just setting foot on the moon again, but doing it in this way that represents hopefully all of humanity, and then carrying that on to take us even further onto another planet and onto Mars. Like, to me, it just like fills me with so much hope. And to be a part of that at all, whether I'm the person putting the boots on the moon or just, you know, here helping set us up for that, and knowing I'll know the person who's doing that, it's just surreal, I think.
There is so much talk these days about
حرف از رفتن به ماه و شاید مریخه. به نظرت زندگی روی ماه و مریخ چه شکلی میتونه باشه؟
Even being on space station, we've had for over 25 years we'd have humans on. It is a bit expeditionary, so it's not quite like camping, but maybe like glamping. You're not fully comfortable. You know, there are a lot of things on a daily basis that make it difficult. And then that just gets increasingly harder as you start talking about, you know, living and working on the moon. These aren't habitable environments for humans, and same for Mars, right? There are a lot of you just need to be very adaptable to the situation, and there's still, in terms of going to Mars, there are still technologies we're going to have to work on, especially when you start talking about radiation and the time to get there and the psychological factors and all those things will factor into it. Like when I was on space station, looking back at Earth was something that you know, helped my mood on a daily basis, but you won't be able to just look back at our planet when you're all the way on Mars. Even from the moon, it looks, you know, much smaller and you can't see the details. So.
with billions of dollars spent in space.
الان کشورهای مختلفی دارن سالانه میلیاردها دلار برای برنامه فضاییشون خرج میکنن. بعضی شاید بگن این پول رو میشه برای فقر مردم خرج کرد. فایده این بودجه‌های فضایی چیه وقتی آدما همینجا روی زمین به این پول احتیاج دارن؟
Yeah, I think that you can always make that argument, right? There is always something else to spend money on, and there's always a near-term problem to spend it on, but we also have to be forward-looking at the same time. And something that I realized is every single time we as humans have explored and tried to go further, we discover. By being in space, we've learned more about our planet Earth than we ever would have if we just stayed here on this planet. We, by virtue of necessity of needing things to have humans survive on space station, we've developed technologies that help us back here on Earth. You know, because water weighs so much to ship up, we recycle 90-something% of our urine, our sweat, the humidity in the atmosphere. That type of technology is useful for somewhere that doesn't have access to clean technology. So we just, like, every single time we explore, we end up building technologies and learning things that advance us, and I think that's important. And even here on Space Station, the technology demonstrations and the science we did while I was up here, it's just mind-blowing, and we've had discoveries that have very direct correlation to things like that improve our lives back here on Earth.
هی میگی اینجا توی ایستگاه فضایی باعث میشه فکر کنم منم رفتم فضا، ولی برای اینکه برای خودم و بیننده‌ها روشن کنم این فقط یه ماکته. چند تا سوال فوری. غذای محبوبت توی فضا؟
Oh, it changed over time, but I'd say by the end it was grilled pork chop and rice. The Japanese JAXA actually had this good white rice. And that's only if we're not counting the قرمه سبزی I brought.
آره قرمه سبزی. خبرساز شدی با اون.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool.
غذای ایرانی محبوبته؟
Ghormeh sabzi is definitely one of my favorites. Ghormeh sabzi, cello kebab, qeymeh, those are probably on the top.
خودتون درست میکنین یا از بیرون سفارش میدین؟
You know, it's funny. My husband actually probably cooks it more than I do.
خیلی بو میده موقع پختن.
Yeah, that was actually one of the coolest things. So I'm looking over there because that behind us here is the galley where we eat food on space station, and that's where we ate the ghormeh sabzi all together, the crew of the 7 of us, with the cosmonaut, Danish astronaut, Japanese astronaut, and us 2 American astronauts. And I remember opening the ghormeh sabzi, and on space station, you don't often smell different things. So you are smelling the same things every day, so you don't use your sense of smell in that same way. But when I opened the ghormeh sabzi, which of course is known for its smell, I remember like instantaneously feeling like I was at home. And just like the smell was just this overwhelming, like, oh, I used to feel like I'm at home. And Satoshi, my crewmate, said it was his favorite meal on space station.
وقتی توی کلیک این خبر رو گذاشتیم که میخوای قرمه سبزی باز کنی توی فضا، همه میگفتن بوشو چیکار میکنه. پس نشد بوشو کاری کنی، نه؟
Yeah, it's such a funny thing because of course everyone knows the ghormeh sabzi is known for its boo, the smell, right?
چقدر میتونیم ببرین فضا؟ مثلا فقط یک کیف دستی میذارن یا ارفاقم میکنن؟
We call them a half CTB, but it's a little bit larger than a shoe box basically that you get to bring of your personal items. NASA sends up, you know, the required clothes, the required food and stuff like that, of course, and hygiene items. But so those for your personal items, it's just a little larger than a big shoebox, basically. And you know, in that I brought some things to, you know, make me feel connected to my daughters and my family. Like I bought 2 little stuffed animal dragons for them, and they had helped me pack them for space. I brought a lot of pictures of friends and family, and then just some different things for the holidays. Like my husband had made me that, you know, felt menorah with the girls to celebrate Hanukkah together and things like that.
کدوم فیلم فضایی قضیه رو به کلی اشتباه گرفته؟ کدومشون زده تو خال؟
Okay, I'll start with which one nailed it to be positive.
Okay.
Apollo 13. I mean, that was one of, I think, the greatest space movies based on reality. And then, well, which one got it wrong? I'd say maybe a lot of them. You know, the one that I feel bad naming a movie, but I remember when I watched, like Gravity, for example, there were several things where I was like, oh, no, that's not quite right, or that's not quite right.
Where was Interstellar?
اینترستلار کجای ماجراست؟
You know, Interstellar, I can't remember the details, but I remember liking that movie.
On a scale of 1 to 10.
از 1 تا 10 چند تا فکر می‌کنی جایی جز روی زمین حیات هوشمند هست؟
Smart life other than on Earth.
I feel the chances there is other life out there is really high. How smart that life is, I don't know, because then when I start to think about, and that's part of what makes it so special that we're here, and I'm also a very big believer of humans. It like blows my mind how capable humans are, and we don't think about that enough. A lot of times we talk about the negative aspects, but like just looking at the things we've built and our capability when we work towards something, no other animal or living thing is even close that we've ever seen. And so, like, to think about something as capable as us out there is hard, but I do think there is. I think it's a high probability there is other life out there.
Give it a number.
حالا یه عدد بده از 1 تا 10.
1 to 10, that there's life or smart life?
حیات هوشمند.
Ooh, 5.
باشه، 5 جواب آخره.
یاسمین مغبلی، خیلی ممنون بابت این گفتگو. امیدوارم که در آینده هم هیجان‌ها و تجربه‌های جالبی توی فضا داشته باشید.
مرسی، خیلی ممنون هستم.
How much are you looking forward to?
خب چقدر مشتاق مأموریت احتمالی اعزام به ما هستی؟
You know, if we're going 1 to 10 on this, a 10. Leaving space station even, it was bittersweet because I wanted to come home and see my friends and family, but I didn't want to leave space station. I loved it. I can't wait to fly again on another mission, whether that's back to space station, of course to the moon. That would be incredible to like step foot on another planetary body, and especially the moon that I've like, I mean, who doesn't look at the moon as a kid and all throughout their life on a daily basis? And so that would just be incredible and almost unbelievable.